Hey there, guys. Welcome back. Mr. Taylor here again with our fifth and final segment on the integumentary system. And so let's start off with some review questions. So go ahead and take a minute here and answer these questions. These were all from our previous lecture. And just go ahead and pause your video and answer these. And when you unpause, I'll give you the answers. Okay, so let's go over these. Number one, responsible for body odor. You should hopefully know that this is your apocrine sweat gland. Now, you could have also said, instead of saying sweat, you could have said apocrine sudoriferous, because sudoriferous is another word for sweat gland. But either one would be fine. The main thing we're looking for is apocrine. Of course, you remember those are found in your armpits, so AP. Okay, number two, protects your ears from infection. This would be your ceruminous glands. And that's why you have earwax. Earwax is there to kind of seal your ears and protect you from getting some sort of infection. Great. Number three, keeps you cool. This would be your eccrine sweat or sudoriferous gland. And so, of course, you produce sweat to cool your body down. Great. Number four, keeps your hair from becoming dry and brittle. This would be your sebaceous gland. And those are, of course, going to produce sebum or oil. Okay, number five, found on the palms of your hands. Well, this is pretty interesting. Obviously, we would not want to have apocrine because we don't want to make BO on the surface of our hand. We would not want to have ceruminous because we don't want to have waxy hands. And you would definitely not want to have sebaceous glands. You would not want to have oily glands. And in fact, if you remember, sebum is produced from hair follicles. So the only thing that's left is eccrine. Think about it. If you had sebaceous glands in the palm of your hand, literally you'd be like butterfingers. Like your hands would just be oily and greasy all the time. That would be bad. So the only ones that you find there should be eccrine. All right, number six, very active in your face during puberty. This would definitely be the sebaceous glands. Because of course these are going to produce oil, which is going to lead to acne, which is something that we usually think of when we think about puberty. And the last one, not active until puberty. Now, as a child, you do have sebaceous glands. They're not quite as active. You definitely have eccrine glands as a child. You definitely have ceruminous glands. So the one that doesn't turn on until puberty, of course, is going to be your apocrine glands. And like I was saying in the last video, we think that apocrine is somehow like some sort of like a signal saying that um, you've gone through puberty, that you're sexually mature at that point. So it's kind of like a way of saying that you're an adult and not a child. All right, today we're going to take a look at the nails. And the nails are very similar to the hair. These are like an appendage organ, an accessory organ of the skin. And if you look at how nails work, they're very similar to hair in that hair was kind of like a tightly packed, like string or shaft of dead keratinocytes. A nail is just like a like a tightly packed hard plate of keratinocytes. And so basically, it's like a hair that grows, except it grows like wider and like thinner than a hair. All right, so when we look at a nail, this is like a little cross section over here, your nail grows from the inside out, just like your hairs do. So your nails actually start growing down here under the skin and they push their way out. If you've ever smashed a nail, you can get like a little bit of like blood, like maybe like a little like bruise underneath your nail. And if you ever watch it, it'll kind of push its way out. And over time, it'll move and migrate towards the edge. The free edge, this is the part that we cut. So when you're trimming your nails, you're actually trimming this off. And this is the oldest part of your nail. So just like your hair grows from the inside out, same thing happens with nails. All right. So when we look at the nail, we see the nail body, and the nail body is the visible part of the nail. So this is kind of like the shaft. So just like the hair shaft is the part that sticks out, the nail body is the part that sticks out. So all this stuff that we can see sticking out is all part of the nail body. Down here at the base of your nail, you may have seen this little thing that looks like kind of like a whitish like crescent, and this is called the lunula. And so this is actually part of the nail matrix we'll talk about a little bit later, but this is kind of like the white crescent that you see at the base of your nail. Now, you may not see this at the base of all your nails, but it should be there in some of your nails at least. All right, around the edges of the nail, so just around here, we have a little bit of skin that overhangs called the cuticle. And so this is just like the overlapping skin. But particularly, this is the stratum corneum, because the stratum corneum is like the top of your skin. It kind of grows out a little bit and kind of like covers up the nail. And sometimes people have these like trimmed or pushed back. And the reason why you can trim them or push them back is because it's just the dead skin um, out on the outside of the nail. All right, the next one is the free edge. And the free edge is just the part that sticks out that we trim. So this is like um, the end of the nail that we trim. On the opposite side of that, we have the nail root, and this is the part like that's deep to the skin. So just like your hair had a root, your nail also has a root. So if you were to continue, this actually goes back a little bit farther underneath your skin here. And then the nail matrix is the part that grows. And so this is basically equivalent to like the follicle of the hair. And so this is the part that we have cells that reproduce, and those cells that reproduce are going to push it out from the root all the way out to the free edge. And so what we find out is that as long as you have active nail matrix, if you were to trim your nail back too far or have damage to your nail, everything's fine as long as that matrix is still there, and then that matrix will continue to push out new nail. But if you damage the matrix, you can actually lose the nail completely, and that's not really very good, and I'll show you why. So here's a little picture of a fingernail. This is just a different illustration, but this also shows you this really creepy cross section of what the nail looks like. And so you can see how we have our matrix all around the nail, and this is our root. So from like where the nail stops being visible, all this stuff under the skin is going to be the root. And basically what happens is that um, normally this is growing out, and if you notice, the finger looks kind of like pushed down by the nail. The nail actually compresses your finger tissue and helps to make your fingertip like have a nice shape to it and allows you to exert pressure. If you lose a fingernail, this whole area just kind of like blows up and becomes really floppy, and that's not really good. You don't want to have like floppy fingertips. So that's one of the reasons why we have to have nails, besides like scratching or picking at things. All right. And so that brings us to the functions of your skin in general. And so these are like, if you put everything together, this is what your skin does for you. So your skin's main number one function is protection of the underlying tissue. So it's your outside barrier. It's going to protect you from any sort of pathogens getting in. It's going to protect you from physical damage, all that kind of stuff. It takes one for the team. It also acts as a waterproof barrier. So because keratin is waterproof, um, we are able to hold our fluids inside of our body. And if you've ever had like a wound, you know sometimes they leak, which is pretty gross. But they also help us to excrete fluid through our sweat glands. So we do some excretion here through sweat. Body temperature also is controlled through sweat, but we can also turn our skin red by opening up capillaries, and by adjusting the blood flow into our skin, we can dump out extra heat. That's why you actually feel hot when you're like burning up, or you feel hot when you're embarrassed, is because you're opening up those capillaries to help to kind of dump some of your extra body heat out. Okay, the next one, synthesis of vitamin D. When your skin is exposed to the sun, there is a chemical reaction that happens inside of your skin that produces vitamin D, which is an essential vitamin. Your body needs it to absorb calcium. So if you eat a bunch of calcium and you don't have enough vitamin D, your body just kind of lets it pass on because it can't make it active. So vitamin D, they actually stick this in milk. So if you ever look at like, a milk carton, it'll say like including vitamin D. We put extra in there just to make sure you get enough. A lot of people that live up in like northern climates or cloudy places like kind of like where we live, will tend to have less vitamin D. Also, people that don't go outside a lot will tend to be kind of deficient in vitamin D. Next one, cutaneous sensation reception basically means you can feel through your skin. And so this is where we see like our like Merkel cells, our Meissner's corpuscles, and our Pacinian corpuscles, um, and also our free nerve endings. So Merkel and Meissner's for feeling touch, Pacinian for pressure, free nerve endings feel temperature and pain. And so we're able to feel all these things through our skin because of all these nerve endings that we have. Next one, communication. Obviously, like you can wave to people, you can smile at people, you can frown. We do a lot of communication with our skin, but you can also tell about people's health based off of their skin. So if someone looks like pale, if someone looks green, if someone looks angry, we have a lot of different looks we can do using our skin. So if someone's very like red in the face, you might think they're embarrassed or angry. If someone looks pale, like they just saw a ghost, probably something bad's happening. So we do a lot of communication with the skin. And the last one is immunity. And this is somewhat related to our protection part. But if you think about those Langerhans cells, they are going to help to protect you from anything that tries to get into your body. So they keep pathogens out. But also, your skin acts mainly as a barrier. And so, as long as we have all that stratified squamous epithelium and then we have all that thick dermis underneath of it, we have a really great barrier. If you get a cut through your skin, it's kind of like allowing all those little pathogens and germs to get right up inside of you. And that's not good. So, as long as you have an intact skin, you're pretty good to go. That's why we have to have band aids. That's why we have to wrap our skin if we ever get cuts. All right, so that brings us to our very last thing, which are some skin conditions. So we're going to talk about some really important different things that can happen with your skin. The first one, whoops, is a nevus. And a nevus is just a fancy word for a mole. So if you have a little area where you have like extra pigment, so you have like a dark area, that's a mole slash nevus. Now, this is a raised mole. So some people have ones that like stick up out of their skin. Some people have ones that are just flat. They call them like beauty marks. Either way, it's a nevus. It doesn't matter whether it protrudes or not. The fact that you have like a one-off freckle, like a one area, that is a nevus. And basically, this is just where you have melanocytes that are just producing extra pigment. So you just have like an extra pigmented region of the skin. This little guy over here is a melanoma, and you can see it looks very different from our normal regular nevus, and we'll come back to that in a minute. Um, oh, sorry, never mind, we won't. So skin cancer, there's lots of different types of skin cancer. If you look at this mole, you can imagine that at one point it was probably smaller than this and didn't look all weird. If you notice, this one has like some areas that are like darker, and then it has areas that are lighter. And if you notice the borders of this guy, it is kind of like a scalloped border where it kind of like bulges out, right? And if you also notice, it's not symmetrical. If no matter how you slice this, it's not a symmetrical mole. So the way that we can tell that someone has a melanoma, oh, there's some more moles for you. Wow, look at those. Like I said, some are flat, some are raised. They come in different colors. This is a blue mole down here. This is like a red or a pink mole. They come in different colors and different sizes and shapes. But the rule for melanomas is the ABCDE rule. And if there's one thing that you learn about in this class, this would probably be the most important thing, is to how to recognize a melanoma. And so basically, this is what we look for. We look for something that's asymmetrical, where you can't split it exactly in half because it's kind of growing out of control. The borders are irregular, scalloped, blurred, or notched, so it doesn't look like it's got like nice round normal borders. Uh, Letter C is for color. And so the color of this will be kind of blotchy. We'll have darker and lighter areas. The diameter, if it's larger than 6 millimeters, which they say is about the size of a pencil eraser, that's a big deal. And then E is for evolution. So if you had a nice little round mole and all of a sudden it's all like distorted and got like some weird shape and it's getting huge and the color's getting weird and it's asymmetrical and the borders, and if all that stuff has happened um, over time, then that's telling you that it's probably a melanoma. So going back to this melanoma, you can see it pretty much finds, hits all those different points. We can't really tell if it's changed over time, but you would imagine that it didn't always look like this. All right, there's other type of skin cancers too. So we talked about the melanoma. We said a nevus was just a mole. There is also what are called carcinomas. And carcinomas, so a melanoma is in a melanocyte, and these are the worst because they spread very quickly. Carcinomas are found in the keratinocytes. And so there's two different types. There's what's called a squamous cell carcinoma, which happens in those flattened squamous cells, and they have a basal cell carcinoma, which happens in the stem cells down in the basal layer. These guys kind of look like wounds that never heal. So it looks like you get a wound and it just won't heal itself because the cells are damaged. Acne. This is where we get an infection into one of our hair follicles and into our sebaceous glands. So it's a sebaceous gland infection. And basically, here's what happens. So you have a normal hair, it's producing its oil, something starts to block it. So generally, this could be like dirt, this could be dead skin cells, something like that, starts to block this. And then the bacteria that normally lives on your skin, that's just like little, like healthy, bacteria, will start to get trapped down here. And then once it's trapped down under the skin, it starts to kind of irritate the skin, start to eat away at some of your tissues. And this causes an immune response. And so when you get the immune response, you have these mast cells, you have these macrophages showing up, and they start to make the skin swell up as they try to fight off this bacteria that got trapped. And then over time, this can cause a lot of swelling and it becomes very irritated. If you get like a white pus, that is just like from the macrophages that are there trying to eat up this bacteria. So that's in a nutshell what acne is. And we go through different names like comedo, which is a blackhead, a closed comedo, which is a whitehead. So blackhead is just where you have like oil, dirt, and dead skin that's kind of blocking it. The closed comedo, the whitehead, is where you start building up pus or white blood cells. You can get like a papule, which is like where you get like a little like bulging piece of acne, and a pustule is where you have like a big pimple that is like about ready to burst. All right, so here is a picture of a basal cell carcinoma, and you can see it kind of looks like a weird wound or like a growth that just won't heal or go away. This is a squamous cell carcinoma, and you can see it's actually like indented. It actually looks like there's like a wound in this person's face. I'm sorry, these are pretty graphic. There's a melanoma. This kind of looks like Brazil, but you can see very irregular, very odd shade, odd border, weird colors. Here's our acne once again, so you can see how down there around the hair shaft, we have this plugged follicle, which is building up with bacteria and dead skin and sebum. And over time, it starts to become very irritated. And then eventually, it becomes just full of pus and super irritated. And then finally, here's vitiligo. Vitiligo is where we have patches of skin where they lose their pigment. And you can even lose the pigment of your hair in those patches as well. And so you can see this gentleman, you can see where he has like his normal tan skin over here, and then he has no pigment. So it's kind of like becoming a partial albino, essentially, is what's going on here. And this is caused by, and it says up here, you get depigmentation, and the darker the skin, the more you notice it. Vitiligo is an autoimmune condition, so your body just kind of is like destroying its own melanocytes, and we don't really know why that happens. And let's see here. A couple more things. So vitiligo is where you get kind of like loss of pigment in patches. All right. Warts are caused by this virus called HPV, or the human papilloma virus. Human papilloma virus infection. And by the way, if you're following along, if you remember, we talked about dermal papillae. Papilloma means nipple like growth. So, literally, when people look at warts, they see these warts are sticking up, and somebody looked at that and said, hey, that thing looks like a nipple, and that's where they got the name from it. So, there's many different types of HPV. HPV is all over the place, but if you get a cut and HPV gets into that cut, that infection will happen localized in that area and cause warts. And so that's why, like, if you ever get a wart, that's where, just like you had a cut and that HPV got in, they very rarely spread outside of that immediate area. And so warts really, they are contagious, although you have to have a cut in your skin to get one. So if I had a wart and I came near you, I couldn't give it to you unless you had a cut, in which case, if some of that virus got inside of there, then you could get a wart. A lot of times people get HPV from dirt, because a lot of warts just shed dead skin cells that are full of HPV, and so it's all over the place. So keep your band-aids on and keep your skin clean. And the last one, skin and aging. Obviously, as you get older, the collagen breaks down. And as collagen breaks down, this leads to good old, whoops, I can't write, wrinkles. So you can develop wrinkles over time. Another thing that happens is that the stem cells of the epidermis slow down. And the reason why they slow down is because they are trying to prevent you from getting cancer, essentially. Is because cancer is caused by cells that reproduce quickly. So in order to combat that, your body kind of slows down its reproduction rate. So in young people, your epidermis is about 4 weeks from basal all the way up to externum corneum. As you get older, it becomes like 5 weeks, 6 weeks, 7 weeks, 8 weeks. And so as you get older, literally your skin is older because there's less stem cells making it. The skin is older and it also becomes thinner. And so older people have a tendency to get more wounds to their skin because they have thinner collagen, their dermis is not as strong, and their epidermis is thinner because it's not reproducing as quickly. And this is why you see a lot of problems with old people and their skin. All right. Well, I think that's a wrap. If you have any questions, make sure you guys hit me up and happy studying. We'll see you later.